Hey guys, welcome back to Enlightened Turtle. Kev here. So I'm just having a little look around on Google Maps. I seen a video yesterday, Jimmy from Bright Insight, excuse me, brought out regarding the Eye of the Sahara Mauritania, and it is a fascinating one, the Eye of the Sahara. Obviously you've got the mountains to the north, whether you want to look at as far as the Atlas Mountains or this mountain range here. Obviously you can see where the Libyan Sea are drained this way. And this of course being the aforementioned Atlantis, Eye of the Sahara. Supposed to be so there'd be a central island with 2 rings of land and 3 of water, 1, 2, 3 of water, 1, 2 of land. But the fascinating thing with this is Herodotus spoke about the flood being so powerful that it raised the foundations of Atlantis. Basically it turned the whole city upside down. And I've heard people talk about Atlantis and say they believe the Straits of Hercules, there's the Pillars of Hercules and the Straits of Hercules, it depends who you listen to. Obviously we know the Pillars of Hercules are, bear with me, just up here we have the Straits of Gibraltar, which I have visited, to be fair. Spent some time in Gibraltar. I've actually took that ferry to and from Morocco as well. But it was, yes, this was the access I spoke about in a previous video, that the Phoenicians, the Carthaginians, as they say, allegedly controlled the Pillars of Hercules, and subsequently controlled access to the Mediterranean and what lied beyond. But just coming back to Mauritania, so we have the Eye of the Sahara there. As I say, you can see the water apparently flushed this way, and I'm not 100% sure which philosopher it was, but one of the philosophers mentioned by the Straits, and I've seen other people who've done some research on this topic reference this area here being the area where the waters broke and ended up rushing through to flood the islands of Atlantis, which is fascinating really. I mean, there's not much you can really tell on Google Maps, there's not that much detail, but it'd be interesting to get down there and see if this was maybe a stone wall in the past, or if there's any boulders or anything like that knocking about. But if we get back over here, if you bear with me just 1 second. Today, Junior. So here we have that eye itself. Now, one of the interesting things for me about this Eye of the Sahara is that when you listen to, I believe it was Herodotus, don't get me wrong, who I was listening to, and he makes reference to, or it might have been Plato actually, I think it was Plato actually, yeah, you mentioned this. He talks about the land of Atlantis, the continent of Atlantis being bigger than Libya and Asia combined. If I'm not mistaken, let's go and check that quote. So here we go, we're on Wikipedia, and as we can see, Atlantis, listen to this, is a fictional island mentioned in an allegory on the hubris of nations in Plato's work, Timaeus and Critias. Now, I believe that's the last one of his dialogues in his book. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it is. Wherein it represents the antagonist naval power that besieges ancient Athens. So that was something that was mentioned by Plato. Is that well, I believe it was the Egyptian priests who mentioned it to Solon, who one of his descendants was the mother of Plato, if I'm not mistaken. So Plato had a direct line to Solon, and obviously they passed down the head of the council of education, if you will. I'm not too sure on the name of what it was in Athens, but like for every lead philosopher there'd be a school attributed to that philosopher, you know, like Plato. The people who followed Plato was something like Platonians or something like that. And then you got the Socratians and all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, apparently the peoples of Atlantis, the navy and the military there, actually attacked Athens and conquered Athens, and according to these, and was repelled by Athens, and according to the Egyptian mystics and the Egyptian priests at the time, they told Solon that this was a part of the Greek history, the Hellenic history, that had been forgotten about. Atlantis had been destroyed, and there was a cataclysm that caused the destruction and loss of memory, the amnesia, if you will, of the Athenians and the Hellenians, basically right across Greece. And sorry about that, yeah, I had to answer my phone. So there was like I was saying, there was Athens was attacked by Atlantis, it was repelled, and then there was a giant cataclysm that came about, that brought about the destruction of the amnesia, the memory and the infrastructure of the Hellenic world, and brought about the total destruction of Atlantis, which is interesting because these Egyptian priests go on to mention that Egypt was spared from the cataclysm, which is fascinating because if you come back and let's look on the map. Sorry, I know I'm pinging a little bit here, guys, but let's just go with the flow, eh? Let's just go where the information takes us. So if you come back over to Egypt, do we see any of the telltale signs of water being moved across the surface? And as we can see either this is all wind or this is all water seeping out when the Libyan Sea drained. And Herodotus does state that all this area was the Libyan Sea, and apparently this was all a fertile, you've got the Fertile Crescent in the Nile, apparently this was all very fertile jungle, tropics, if you will. But yet, so we go back over and we take a look, and there's not much going on there, is there? So was Egypt spared from this cataclysm? I mean, when you think of the amount of salt and the amount of salt that's being left on the earth here, off the draining of the sea, the salt's being left behind, obviously making it very difficult to grow crops and all this kind of stuff, making the land arid. But over in Egypt, you know, if there was that much salt, surely would have made it very difficult to grow crops and all that in Egypt. Obviously they've got the constant supply of fresh water, which, who knows, maybe they did, maybe it was spared, maybe it wasn't, who knows. Alas, as I was looking through Google Maps, I was just looking for some telltale signs really of the remnants of Atlantis. Now if this was the city here, and just very quick to touch on also, you know, the Greek philosophers, they don't just mention Atlantis being a city. Atlantis is mentioned as a continent, and it's spoke of as being past the Pillars of Hercules and being as large, being as large as Libya and Asia combined. So when you think about it, back in the day, for someone like Herodotus, I believe all of this was known as Libya, because as I say, there was a giant sea, the land was more tropical, the borders would have been completely different to what we see now. But if you take a look on the map, this is Asia. Like over here, you know, bloody massive. You've got Eurasia over here, European Asia, like the Great Steppe area and stuff. And then you've got, if this area over here was Libya, say, the majority of this area, then I can't help but think that he's referencing America as Atlantis. Now, I'm not saying that's the case, but if you follow, people like to pull quotes out of the older texts and use them as reference points, as I am myself. But sometimes it gets lost in the translation, and people get hung up on a certain aspect of the dialogue. But that's one that shouldn't be missed, really. You know, we've got the Pillars of Hercules, and then we head out. There's no landmass under the water that I can see the size of Libya and Asia combined. Now there is, if you come down to the Canary Isles, is this the Canary Isles? Yes, there's Gran Canaria and stuff. So you have Fuerteventura, I believe that's Tenerife up there. I don't know, Santa Cruz, the Tenerife, oh there's Tenerife, and there's Gran Canaria. Now there is pyramids on the Canary Isles. Let's see if anything pops up. Remember Chega? There we go. Look at the size of these complexes. Let's go for a little 3D action. Doesn't really make a difference, does it? But as you can see, you've got some old geology here. Who knows what's going on? Maybe that's local modern agriculture. But there's definitely some old structures on the Canary Isles, and there's people who believe, contrary to belief, of an island in the middle of the Atlantic or in Mauritania itself. People believe that this could have been the Atlantis, you know, the Canary Isles. You got Herodotus talking about going along the Mediterranean, out past the Pillars of Hercules, to a continent the size of Europe and, Libya and Asia. Now, there's nothing there that fits the bill. There's nothing here that fits the bill, unless, of course, as mentioned before, people in the past have mentioned about the Pillars of Hercules being here, and these were the straits that were broken, and before the water, these held back the water, and the waters came in of the Libyan Sea. But dead quick as well. One of the things I've got to say here, you know, look at this. I mean, what you can quite clearly see here, the waters approach from this way, following the line, almost like grain in the wood. And look at the ripples on the sand. You know, it's clear as day. I have made a video in the past referencing Roger from Mud Fossil University, where he talked about giant dragons, earth biology, like a primordial cosmological universe of entities. Really, it's fascinating. I don't necessarily agree with everything he says. I'm more interested in the science, his work on muons and electron flood theory. I have a totally different model that I believe in myself. Not to get too far off topic, but I believe in oscillation, not rotation. So I believe that the sun and moon move through the field of ether, which is a contained electromagnetic environment, which creates reaction, and then off the emission of photons and electrons from the sun or the moon in varying states. Obviously, we both know the light energy of both is opposite. One is warm yellow light, the other is putrid blue light from the moon. Now, if you have a dispersion of an emission of electrons, photons, whatever, there is still an umbrella effect because we have attraction to the ground. So light cannot continuously travel across the plane of the earth. There is a natural effect of the emission falling down to the earth. Now, people question about that, but look into harmonic resonance, the Schumann frequencies, magnetic fields and all this kind of stuff. It's into stuff that's for a video on a later date though. Like I say, if you're heard by what I just said there, it's very complex and there's a lot of science that still needs to be cross-referenced before I can make a full assertive video on that ideology. But back to this. So yeah, we've got like big like mountain type structures here, giant hills just north of Mauritania. And one of the things the Sahara, one of the things I was interested in when I started looking at Google Maps today was I was trying to focus on areas where the least runoff took place, the driest areas of the flood, if you will. And I was trying to see if there'd be any remnants of like structures, masonry, boulders, stonework, or even just some foundational work. And it's very difficult to find anything, if I'm being completely honest. Google Maps is some images are very high resolution, some images are very low resolution, and some images are being either coloured in, changed, or something altogether. But as you can see, the water's obviously ran away. That's classic geology, I guess, right there. Excuse me. So yeah, so as I say, I was looking for drier areas, and I noticed you had all these like elevations and then drop-offs in altitude. So as you can see, the water would have found its way this way, but it would have also looked for its path of least resistance. So you'd like to think if all the foundations and stuff of Atlantis were basically ripped up and shoved along the surface as the water, the mud. Another one of the Greek philosophers talks about the destruction of Atlantis, says they'll never speak of mud again, because some believe it was like a mud flood. Once the water had washed over the sediment and mud was so liquefied, it ran like water, and basically they'll never speak of mud again, allegedly. So this is not too dissimilar from what we have in the recent last couple of 100 years, when people talk about the mud flood and the Tartarian Great Reset, things like that. But yes, like I say, I'm looking for any telltale signs of any leftovers, and like I say, you find patches of land like this got discoloration, so it's hard to tell really. But I'd like to think that if you went out to this area and actually looked through all the debris that you find out from the eye of the Sahara all the way to the west, I am pretty sure you must be able to find some debris. Like, if you can't find any debris out there, then that tells me that there's nothing there to find. As you see, it obviously ran all the way to the ocean. There's a nice corporate office right on the coast here. So like I said, I was just checking to see if I could see any boulders or anything like that, but I haven't got the magnification on the zoom anyway to even see that. But if we take a little look over here, let's look for that place again. Check it. So here we go, here's Chega. Zoom out so you can have a good look. This is in the rear area of the giant fish, according to Roger, with this allegedly a giant dragon. Believe that if you will, I'm not going there. But like I say, you can see runoff this way, runoff all around, but you don't see much runoff on this apparently solid rock, whether this is like a mesa, this was elevated ground when the Libyan Sea was about, who knows. But if you go and take a closer look at Chege, I was thinking, surely if Atlantis was there as the Eye of the Sahara in Mauritania, then the surrounding areas, there was allegedly 10 kingdoms of Atlantis. So there's got to be some other areas besides the cities within the rings itself. And as Herodotus has mentioned, if the nation of Atlantis was as big as Europe and Eurasia, then it must have been absolutely huge. So maybe Atlantis, say the ringed cities, was just the capital, and this whole region was Atlantis, and that actually was that little strait area I mentioned before. Maybe that is the true Pillars of Hercules, and all this Western African area was Atlantis. Say this was all speculation, no one really knows the truth. We can all interpret it, the dialogues the best as we can. But here we go. So this is that place Chege, as I've mentioned. It's not really taking me to the place I wanted to go. Here we go. So as I was looking around, I came across this little place called Chege. So I seen this. Now, I think it's been mentioned that it's a fort. It's an old colonial fort, and this apparently is a major trade route across the desert. So it's a well populated, it's a well used travel route. So maybe you would find settlements along there. But the interesting thing for me about this is it's elevated, as you can see here. This looks like maybe water was there once upon a time. You know, a little beach area maybe, who knows. But there's definitely a pretty big structure here. I could see it being a fort. Obviously you've got two towers on the edge there, but who knows how old the fort is itself. You've got some kind of work down here on the ground. You've got more elevated areas here, right next to a water line potentially. And as you can see, you've got seemingly more structures, or the old foundation work of previous structures. You've even got like a road coming, an avenue or something coming out from there. I just wish I could get closer so I could see in more detail. But I was fascinated by that, and as you can see, there's more raised areas here. And then I came across this river, and I was like, okay, so we've got this huge river. Anything going on with the river? Lo and behold, I noticed the water runs off here and the water runs off there, leaving this area less affected. Say, let's say if there was the initial pulse of water would have flown over, caused all the destruction, and then it'd be a lower level of water that fed into these streams and rivers as it was draining out. However, if I look at this here, that to me looks like a massive Iron Age settlement. I'll show you what an Iron Age settlement looks like in the UK. So here we go. These are like the Iron Age forts in Great Britain. And you'd be like, okay, that looks kind of similar. Let's just have a closer look. Like you see, elevated ground. Normally a bit of an oval shape, you know, like that film, Lord of the Rings, with Rohan, where it's got the city of the horse lords. Like if you look at this one here, Old Sarum. Now I've been actually in that area a number of times and really wanted to check this fort out, but I didn't get a chance to go, unfortunately. But as you can see, Iron Age hill forts. There's another one that's been taken over by, I don't know if you can see this because my image might be in the way. It's this one here, Hembury Fort, Honiton, Devon, which is down the south coast. You have another one here, Iron Age hill forts and settlements. That's a video. There's so many of them. You see this one under the ground, this massive one here. So there's an image for you of what the hill forts look like, and I just can't help but look at this and think, wow, that looks like a hill fort to me. It really, really does. Which led me onto a little bit of a goose chase for the last hour and a half, to be honest. So I was like, Well, surely there's got to be some story of Chega. There's obviously a fort there, well, construction work. It's on a ridge line, and it's right on the edge of where a lot of water seemingly flowed and was protected, reasonably protected. So let's go and have a look at what I found. So I found this website. Now, it took me a little while to find this, to be honest. So here we have Mauritania. We have some locations here there scattered about, but as you can see, Chega right up in the north there. So let's read some of this. Searching on Google for information about Chega, I discovered that what is available is probably provided by persons who have never been there. Small town, ? Where ? When I was there in 1973, there was no town, no sign whatsoever of a former town ever had existed in this location. The fort, the only attraction. What about the Neolithic rock carvings in the Oud above the site? Now, let's go into that. So you got rock carvings. Now, when you come down and you take a look, I mean, it's not very clear. These images, the old images, the like black and white stuff. You'd like to think more research was done on places like this being so remote, you know. See, some kind of building up there. Peaceful greenery in a land of only browns and orchards. At the water source with small birds flittering about, the concrete holding pond is clearly visible. Wherein, so that's in German or Dutch or something. So yeah, let's have a look at a couple more of these shots. As you can see, there's some guys at the local watering hole there. Seem to be taking water from a reservoir or a lake. Excuse me. But yeah, these images here, like bulls, carvings of animals and stuff like that, Neolithic carvings of animals and stuff. So let's just go and take a little look at what's found near Iron Age forts in the UK. So we're back in the UK, and this is UK Iron Age hills. I should have put there, apologies, rock carvings. So when we have these Iron Age hill forts in the UK, we find Neolithic rock art. Now, the reason why this is fascinating to me is because this seems to indicate a similarity of culture. You're building similar style forts, and they're expressing themselves through cave carvings on the rocks, on the land. If you look at the bloodlines, the haplogroups, and the RH, the Reese negative blood groupings, you'll find that. Let's go back to the map real quick. Zoom out for the benefit of the viewers. So we have, let's just break it down real quick. We have the Caucasus regions over here, the Great Steppes, the Levant, around here you have Saudi Arabia, Egypt, it's all Mesopotamia as well over there, don't forget, you've got Egypt, allegedly Libya and Ethiopia. And then we have the Mediterranean and Britain and Northern Europe, the Baltics, etc. So we have the lost 10 tribes allegedly came out of this area, migrated over that way and over this way, and used the Phoenician ships to sail along the Med and out, much like tales of Egyptian princesses, etc., leaving the Mediterranean and going to places like Ireland and Scotland. But the point I'm making here is that the RH1 negative blood grouping and the haploblood grouping originate from this area over here, around Turkey and the Caucasus regions. The oldest pharaohs in Egypt are known to be very high in Rh1 negative blood groupings, which is a blood grouping that is now in modern day predominantly found in England, northern England, Scotland, Ireland and Wales, and around into, say, the other northern countries of Europe, predominantly the western areas, for less watering down of the genomes, if you will. Now, in doing that, what else you find is that there's actually a link between all the people from the north of Scotland all the way down to Western Africa, the Western Sahara. All these areas have all been shown to have similar genetic groupings. Now, when you go back to the areas of the islands of the Canary Islands, these populaces here, I believe they're called the Cheggers or something, which is interesting because I've got that there. Just let me double check. Right, they weren't called Cheggers, they're called Guanches. But if you go and take a look at these Guanches, as you say here, as it says here, the Guanches were Aboriginal inhabitants of the Canary Islands. In 2017, the first genome data from the Guanches confirmed a North African origin, and that they were genetically most similar to ancient North African Berbers, peoples of the nearby North African mainland. So go back to the map. So the Berbers and all that, they were all from like this region here. And like I say, when we had an expulsion from this area on the map, a lot of people came along and founded settlements along these areas. Now, it's just fascinating because we're seeing a northern Saharan culture and a sub-Saharan culture, and the northern Saharan culture, as I've just pointed out, has got similar relations to those in the UK. But now, just to touch back on what I was saying, and I need settlements and forts and artwork and things like that. But like I say, the migration of the Lost 10 tribes allegedly came out of this area. I mentioned in the previous video, you know, the Danube River and all this kind of stuff. But what's fascinating is you've got like the Iceni tribe in Great Britain. Now, the Iceni actually, even though they occupied different areas of lands, different tribes when the Romans came over, everyone's aware of Boudica and her partner, the king who was murdered. Boudica and her children, her daughters, were, you know, terrible things happened to them, and she was able to rally an army of allegedly 100,000 people going back 2,000 years. You know, work that out. It's incredible. This is supposed to be a scarcely populated island, but Boudica was able to rally 100,000 people. But yeah, let's get back to the point. The point I was making is Boudica and stuff, they came from an area around here, York, which was the previous capital of Great Britain. Now, there's a river, right, here we go, here's York, sorry about that, and here is the River Ouse. Now, I actually translated the word River Ouse because I was fascinated, like I say, with the lost tribes and the migration. So I was like, well, let's translate River Ouse into Hebrew, and what came out for me was the house of the crossing, because obviously Ouse was Semitic for house, and river was like it was used as a word of like crossing, you know, like a river. We think of a river, we think water, we think flow, but for some reason when I put it into the translator, it came out as crossing, as in like to be crossed or have crossed, you know, in a sense. So when I was looking at that and you put it together, you've got the Iceni tribe who came from York, which was a previous capital of the country, called the river Ouse, the house crossing. So could that symbolise the crossing house? You know, who knows, maybe that they came across from France, came across from further up from Norway or things like that. Because as I said in the previous video as well, when I was looking at the map of this region, you know, all these nations around here, there's a very high potentiality that these were all founded by the lost tribes of Israel. Now, I can't give you all the information on that because I'm still learning, I'm still growing, I'm just a man with 2 arms and 2 legs. Give you a break, goddammit. But if you go and look at the work of Yair Davidi, you will see like the levels of information that come through the scriptures, migration policies, and names of kingdoms, empires, locations, rivers, all kinds of stuff that you see as you go through. But yeah, like I say, I was just having a little look at the map and having a little ping round. Let's see if there's I do believe there was another website I found. Here we go. So this was in reference to like Chegger and things like that. Alright, no tell a lie, this was when I was looking on the maps for like say different areas, excuse me, where you're seeing less runoff, and one of the areas I seen less runoff was over here. Let's just type in Timbuktu. Right, here it goes, on the Mali border. So I was like, okay, here we have Timbuktu. As you can see all the runoff here. Either that or that's just wind erosion, wind patterns on the surface. But if you look around, you start to see where the lines are, the drainage and things like that. And as I said, it come from by Timbuktu there, and I'm just looking for areas, as you can see, no big lines across the screen. I'm looking for areas of less erosion, and I start to see things like this, you know, like similar looking forts with what seem to be walls going around. Obviously, you've seen all the erosion tends to come from the northeast to the southwest. So who knows, maybe that was a fort, but then you go in for a closer look and you start to see things like this. Now, are they excavation pits? People just been digging holes here, looking for artifacts or whatever. But even if they are, that's an indication that there was potentially a settlement here in the past. Or are these just giant puddles left behind from some kind of flood? You know, we've all seen that kind of depression in surface before. But it's fascinating with all these rings. I've never really seen this before. Like I say, I look at this and I think that looks like potential walled structures maybe. Then we move along and we see what looks like potentially more structures. Start to see more lines. Now I don't know, I mean, I'm just totally guessing here. I'm just flying around, having a little look, see if anything sticks out. But it looks like a clearly defined structure in a way. Either that, it's a solid mesa, which would be perfect to build on, you know. As you zoom out, you start to see there's quite a few of these potential structures here. Either that or they're just really odd elevation plateaus, mesas in the middle of nowhere. Like I say, you just can't zoom in enough to see fine detail. Looks quite defined really, doesn't it? Half a square. Some circle stuff inside. I mean, I'd like to think that there's been a lot of people who've done all this kind of stuff before. You know, they've actually looked over all of this, because I'm quite new to all this. But I don't know what this is here. But it has it starts out of nowhere, and then has an abrupt ending up here. God knows what's going on there. I mean, the thing is as well, there's a lot of active mines and things like that in Africa that you have to be aware of, which this could quite easily be a mine, you know, or it could quite easily be the eradication of an ancient monument / site. And we have a small town here. It's interesting just looking at these small towns, you know. But like, as you can see there, that's an enclosed, that's a wall enclosure. See the shadow, see the shape. And then you come down here and you look at these structures here. Basically the same thing, they just look bigger. A hell of a lot bigger. So like I say, I'm just whipping around here, I'm just looking at some map stuff here, just trying to find any settlements or any stone structures that stick out, or anything just peculiar in general really. And I came across this. It's a little place called Arawan. Excuse me, Arawan of Lord of the Rings. I have to stop drinking coffee when I'm making these videos. Give me gas. Excuse me. And if you take a look here, everything's like blue. It's got like a bluish hue. Now I'm not too sure. These are probably just a settlement. But what I found fascinating here is there's no roads. I can't see no roads in. I can't see no roads out. And I can't help but wonder what is going on here. Are these like I can't see no cars, no vehicles, no petrol stations, no supermarkets. I mean, it could be all of the above I'm looking at right now, but it doesn't appear to be that way. This goes to show you, there's so many crazy little places out there in the world, on Google Maps. This was around about 250 miles, 250 kilometers, I think it was, north of Timbuktu, something like that. There's Timbuktu down here. And like I said, I've just been having a little roll around this whole region really, hoping to find like a massive temple or something, which I haven't. And I'm probably going to leave it there, to be honest guys. Say this has just been a little whip around, having a little look around. Yeah, so like I say, that was just a little look around on Google Maps of that area of Mauritania. Just a little discussion really on a little bit of knowledge about the area, what the philosophers mentioned, and what is visible on the surface. Like I say, the mention of Atlantis being such a large continent gives me large reservations about the Isle of Sahara being the lost city of Atlantis, if you will. Well, let's rephrase that. I do believe it has the potential to be a city, though if you look at the size of the area, it could be a small country in essence, couldn't it? But in actual fact, when people talk about the nation of Atlantis being so huge, having 10 kingdoms and multiple kings, twins here, there and everywhere, then you'd like to think it'd be a really substantial area. And I can't help but either think it would be this northwestern region of Africa, like this whole region there, or for me it'd have to be the area that's in dark on the map now, which is North America. And then we find so many Tartarian cities in America, like Roman neoclassical architecture and the world fairs, etc. I'd advise anyone to check out some of the videos I've been sharing recently regarding world fairs, some of the black and white imagery of these incredible temples and facilities that allegedly popped up overnight and were eradicated and replaced by community housing in essence. So yeah, that's about it guys. Like I say, hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like and subscribe. Check out some of my other videos, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.